and I want to get this on record. It is the narrative that is heralded over the pulpits all over America that the welfare of the poor should be provided by the church. Okay? That is the narrative. Paula didn't go that far with it, but that is the narrative that we are told and taught consistently. That's right. That it is the church's job to be participatory in taking care of the widows, and the Bible said that, and that we should take care of the naked and clothe the naked and feed the poor. Here is the reality. That is the ideal. If you just do the math,
doesn't work out.
if you just do the math, if you take the gross national income of all the churches in America, if we didn't pay the mortgage, if we didn't pay the staff, if we didn't pay the light bill, and took all of our money and gave it all away to the poor and became homeless to feed them, we still don't have the money when we are taking 10% of a few people's income and they're taking 35% of everybody's income. I'd be that gone if I should have to feed everybody by myself. Now, when I did the math on it, I realized that what I am asking the people to do doesn't work. I can help. I can help. I can do my part. I can participate. I can join in. But why did you take 40% of my check and then tell me that I got to turn around and take another 10% to do what you're not doing? When I gave the 40, I thought you were going to feed somebody. And I think we need to rise up and challenge people.
Come on, Bishop.
Because I switched on that. I used to say that too until I got a calculator. And I added it all up, and I started feeding hungry people myself. And if I fed all 100 people in my zip code, I would have to not pay my staff, and they would be hungry too. So at what point, if you're going to take my money, I don't get to give it, you take it. Before I ever get to see it, I think you can't have 40% of my check and absolve yourself of the responsibility to help feed my community. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I used to buy it. I used to buy it. I used to say it. But when I added it up, it's easy to say that when you live in neighborhoods like we do. But when you actually start feeding them, and don't touch health care. When you start talking about a prescription for blood pressure being $400, $600 for one grandmama who's got 5 different conditions in her body, I don't think the church could do it if we all went bankrupt trying.
Exactly.
And Bishop, is it?
Go ahead, Bishop.
I'm sorry. I just don't agree.
No, you're right.
Bishop is
This is real.
Bishop is exactly right.
Okay,
Wait.
You got us all standing up. This is real.
There's a
It is real.
constitution.
But so
the government has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they've got to do their part. You're right. We're to help them, but not to let them off the hook for what they take our money and say they're doing. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
And I'll feed them if you give me my 40% back. Give me my 40% back, and maybe I can do it. But don't leave me with 10% of a third of my congregation and tell me to go do what you say has increased the national deficit when you got 40% and 30% and I got 10% of a few faithful people. The math just doesn't work.
Go ahead, Bishop.
Preach. Bishop. Preach.
I don't need a scripture. I don't need a newspaper. All you need is a calculator. If you got a calculator, you can figure this out.
Daddy.
We can't do it. I want to do it. I have a heart to do it. We can't do it.
Okay.
Preach. Bishop.
All right.
Bishop is exactly right.
Okay. All right. Let's Bishop.
Pastor White has something to say.
100, I agree with you. Bishop. See, they can't hear nothing now.
This is supposed to be a political session and we getting all happy up in here. What is that about? Oh.
Bishop, it doesn't add up. But neither does the $7 trillion debt we have right now. So the church doesn't have the money.
But
and I agree. Wait, just one second. Just one second. But neither does the debt. Everything's got to be overhauled. And I believe what you said is so critical, and I want to go into that. And that is that it starts at a local level of holding accountable and the church working with government partnership on a local level, changing our communities, changing our churches, changing our families, because it doesn't add up on the calculator of the U.S. national debt either. So we have problems in both areas.
The national debt is important. The debt owed to our communities is even more important, though. These are issues that have been stacking up for a long time. And you know what? A lot of folks say, well, if the church just stepped up. I want everybody to go to an organization called Bread for the World. It's a faith-based organization that works on hunger issues here in the United States. And they have done the calculations. They've used Bishop's calculator, and they've added it all up and said that if every church in the country maxed out their spending on food and hunger issues, that would only cover about 6 to 7% of the hunger issues in our country. 93% is government. That's food stamps, SNAP program. That, by the way, that's another huge myth around that. People think that that's people abusing the system and so forth. Most of the people using SNAP are working families. And guess what? Most of them are actually not people of color. That's the federal school lunch program, where kids who sometimes that's the best meal they get is breakfast and lunch. And they're going after that right now.
And they're trying to cut it off right now.
7% is the church. 93% is that money that they're taking out of your check and need to give back to the debt that they owe our communities. That's the debt that I'm concerned about.
But Josh, the devil is in the details on that SNAP program. They're saying that the SNAP program, there's no evidence that it's working because it's meant to help children learn and have more educational prowess. But how is a child going to learn when they're hungry?
Right.
And that's the only meal that they eat.
Y'all look at this. And this is another across the aisle thing. If every person who voted for Donald Trump could reach out to their legislatures and say, hey, listen, y'all can do what you want about this issue or that, but protect those who are hungry. Don't cut these school lunches. Don't cut SNAP. This is hungry working people. This is the working poor in our country that, folks like, I remember coming up Nashville, Tennessee, my grandmother, Katie Lee Sinkfield in Nashville, would use her money for as much as she could and use a little bit of support for just the rest, just that balance. These are not folks who are trying to bleed the system dry. These are people who are just trying to survive. Let's support them.
But that is the narrative. See, this is why I thought April conducting the session is very important, because that is the narrative depending on what station you listen to.
Right.
That is described about poverty, that these are just lazy people who are wanting to live off of the government and drink. So once you castigate the integrity of a person who's poor, you dry up the bowels of compassion because you describe somebody that you have never met. Wow. That you have never met. I have been poor. It's really not cool. Nobody wants to be poor. And the little bit of money that the government gives you is not enough to walk across the street. So what we really need, if Paula's point is true, and I accept it looking at the national deficit, that we can't just continue to go in debt. And then what we salve ourselves with in churches, that the church needs to do it, but the reality is the numbers don't add up. Then what we need is jobs and opportunities to decrease the amount of people who need assistance. You're always going to have somebody who needs assistance because of health reasons, age, circumstances, lack of education. But if we would fix our criminal justice system, if we would fix our education system, we're now number 25 in the world. We used to be number 1. Now America, not black America in general is number 25 in the world. It used to be children around the world were dying trying to get to America to get an education. Now they're going to the UK and other places because our school systems are laying in ruin. And the criteria for getting a job requires more education than it ever did before. We need to create jobs for ordinary, grassroots, blue-collar workers, and we would decrease the amount of people that needed assistance, and then the program would work like it was supposed to. But you can't tell people, get out and get a job, when I have a criminal record somewhere in my past. The same person who tells me I ought to be working is the same person who says you won't hire me and you won't give me a place to stay. What am I going to do? You won't hire me, you won't rent to me, I can't get a job, you don't want me to get back on drugs. How can I feed my family and get off assistance without an opportunity?
Bishop Jakes, Pastor White has that same.
Well, you said, how can I get off? Bishop, the same way you and I did. I was on welfare. I was on WIC. Brad, stand up. I had him. I was an 18-year-old. He won't stand up. I was 18 years old, pregnant out of wedlock.
But were you an ex-inmate? Were you an inmate
no,
with a record?
No. I'm not talking about the inmate or record. Okay. I'm not talking about criminal justice. We're talking about the poverty situation and helping.
But they're connected.
I get
connected.
It. You're right. You're right.
Because until you get a just system.
I agree.
Because now we don't incarcerate people for being guilty. Because if you're guilty and got money, you can get out of anything. We incarcerate people for being broke.
It's all about poverty. Exactly. It's about poverty and locking them in.
Absolutely. Listen, we have the Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative. I know what I'm talking about. We have worked 10,000 inmates through our program. This is not philosophical ideology. We are on ground level zero with this every day. I see the hopelessness in the eyes of fathers and mothers who want to do exactly what you and I did, Paula, but because of that question on the application, they can't get a fighting chance to feed their own children. We have got to fix this. And the other thing you have to realize, there's a difference between the poverty that we experience and the poverty that's going on in South Dallas. I was broke, but they wasn't shooting at me. I was broke, but they wasn't throwing my babies out of windows. I was broke, but they weren't killing on my sidewalk. We have got to clean this problem up. It's a serious problem. The right and the left both care about it. When are we going to find our voice and fix this? We can't be like Jesus and ignore the suffering people in our community.
I think we all agree on that one, Bishop.
But what are we going to do? How can we unite? That's what I'm glad we agree. How can we unite and come together and build a strategy that moves things forward when we have a system of common need? The same thing in the Rust Belt cities, the same thing that they're angry about is the exact same thing that the inner cities are upset about. It's not a black-white issue. Broke is broke. Hungry is hungry. Naked is naked. Rust Belt are saying, you ignored us. Inner cities are saying, you ignored us. When are the people at the top going to hear the people at the bottom and bring about some change? I don't care what you call the party, fix the problem.
And Bishop, if every, you're exactly right. And let me just say something very practical in response. If every pastor that supported Donald Trump on Monday morning got up and went to go tell Attorney General Sessions that we want to pass criminal justice reform, and Donald Trump they told him the same thing, that bill would be passed. If every evangelical that supported this current president mobilized, and Bishop is doing this, if they mobilized around these issues and said, I may be conservative on some things and not on others, but we're going to get behind this. If they did that, if they put themselves on the line and put themselves out there to pass criminal justice reform, that legislation would be passed. That's what we need. Are folks to put themselves.
Just the people who voted for him?
No. I'm just saying if they joined across both sides.
Okay.
If they joined, yeah.
Now, I'm going to say this. We've been all fired up and ready to go. Yep. We have talked a good talk, and I mean, I'm ready to jump over pew. I'm feeling good. But in the Potter's house with Bishop T.D. Jakes. So, I haven't told y'all I was a fan from when he was in West Virginia talking about get ready. But let me say this. It's one thing to sit up here and feel all this. I want each and every one of you who's a leader to stand up. Who's a leader? Now the pastors, stand up. Who's committed to make change? We can talk all this stuff. But if each and every one of you in this building commits this moment in this church, I don't care if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're a woman, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, are you hurting? You ain't hurting. You just ready to jump over a pew when Bishop Jake says something. Are you hurting? Are you ready for change? All right. So now what we're going to do, we're going to shift the next 14 minutes and 33 seconds. What are the solutions? How do you strategize? Each and every one of you who stood up, you listen and you come some kind of way and come together. If you want to make change, it comes together in communities consistently and persistently. And also what the squeaky wheel gets what?
The grease.
All right. What's the strategy, Paula White, since you got the ear of this president?
I received that by the grace of God. Amen. And that we
It wasn't shade. It wasn't
I know.
shade. But no.
April and I love each other. We going to lunch soon, all right?
No, I'm glad you, if you do
Yes,
have
sir.
the ear of this president, I'm glad.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad.